everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lost with Friends. As always, I'm your host, Paul, and today we will be talking about the episode House of the Rising Sun. I'm joined by a very good friend of mine from the other side of the, well, continent actually, because she's coming to us from a different country. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I live in Canada, in sort of in the Vancouver area, which is just like above Seattle along the west coast.
All right. Um, Now, you and I met much like everybody else I've had so far on the show. We met in Hawaii, 2014 Lost.
Yes.
Can you give us a little bit about how you got into the show and being in Hawaii and that experience for you?
Sure. So I lived like I was born in Whitehorse, but I lived in a small town called Watson Lake for about 4 or 5 years. And really, there's absolutely nothing to do in that town besides like walking around, I don't know, working. So my dad actually had watched this show when it first came out, and he remembered about it, I guess. And so we ordered it on eBay, the first 3 seasons, because at the time that was all that was out. And so, like, it was kind of a family event that we would all sit around. We had a laptop, and that was how we watched the show. And we'd like put the discs in, and we'd all sit around this little laptop and watch Lost. And I was probably about, I guess I was like 12 when I first started watching it. Um, and it just became sort of one of those things where it was like a nice escape from everyday life because our life was so boring. Like there's literally nothing to do. So like every night, my mom and my sisters and I, we'd all, well, actually only one of my sisters, we went to work and we all worked at the same place. And it was like the whole shift at work would be talking about Lost. And that would be like what we look forward to at the end of the day, to go home, make dinner, eat it as fast as we could, and then go and watch Lost. So that was like my escape from everyday life. Um, and then after, I guess, all of the seasons had come out, however many years later, um, I kind of was like the only one in the family, mostly anyway, that like still loved the show. And I thought it would be awesome if I could go to this convention thing that I heard about. I actually didn't find out about the Hawaii thing until it like probably 5 months before it was actually going to take place, because I guess I was just out of the loop. But when I found out about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to do everything in my power to try and to go to this thing. And I didn't know anybody that like would want to go with me besides my sisters, but they were like really off in their own land doing their own thing. So I was like, I'm going to go by myself. So I like scrounged together the money to go, and I booked the trip, and before I knew it, I was in Hawaii, and it was a really great time.
All right. Actually, I have to say one of my earliest memories there was myself and two people that we know from Europe. We were walking because they were some of the first friends that I met, and we were walking down the street, and all of a sudden I see this girl walking, kind of about to walk past us, and she's wearing a white shirt with the black Dharma
Yeah.
logo on it, and we all kind of look at each other and go, bet you that girl's with the thing. And then about maybe a day or so later, I finally met Kelsey, and we've pretty much been friends ever since.
Yep.
So that's my first memory of not meeting you, but
Right.
just
Seeing me.
being there and
Yes.
whatever. Um, so pretty much, I guess we could get right into the episode, House of the Rising Sun. Now, I remember when I asked you to do this, you said you weren't a big fan of Jin and Sun. Is there any particular reason?
Um, I don't know. Like right from the beginning, they were kind of on the outskirts of everyone just because they didn't speak English, and it was like I don't know. They had this weird sort of tension between them, and I didn't quite understand it because in like obviously in the first season we don't know any characters very well, but then like I don't know, even as like the seasons went on, I just like uh, I don't know, there was something about them that just didn't seem to grasp my attention. I guess because like I find it hard to connect to like other cultures and stuff, so like all their flashbacks and stuff are very much in their culture, and I find it really hard to latch on to that. So I couldn't really get emotionally involved with their characters as much as some of the other characters.
Okay. All right. So getting into the episode, very first note I have is we open on an eye, which of course is a reoccurring thing within this show.
Yes.
Uh, One of the things that I found interesting when watching it back just the other day was we get to hear how the others sound according to Sun, and this becomes a factor later in the episode and a little bit later in the series because, as we know, we find out in this episode she actually speaks English, so
Hmm.
she hears them as they are,
Right.
and a little bit of a spoiler for the people, if there's anybody who hasn't watched this show. We later find out in a flash or in a Jin centric episode, he hears them and they sound different. I think they played the audio backwards or something for that, but it was just a matter of he couldn't understand them because he doesn't speak English. So I thought that at this very early thing was, they were kind of letting us in on what would even end up happening in this episode right there in kind of one of the opening scenes.
Hmm.
Talk of Jack's tattoos, which of course will one day lead to my least favorite episode. Uh, I love Charlie's line where he says about them verbally copulating. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Just some of his little things. Sawyer, of course, with the insults, but I love when Charlie gets little digs like that in as well.
I thought
Uh,
it was interesting that when we were like when the spoiler, as you called it, of hearing or knowing what Sun hears when the others talk, that was actually when Jack was talking about his tattoo, and I thought it interesting, like because you're not focused or the camera wasn't focused on Jack and Kate at the time hearing that conversation, and then we hear Sun or we see Sun sort of reacting to their conversation, knowing that she can or assuming that she can understand them. And it's kind of interesting hearing them talk in the background about something when they're not actually, the camera's not focused on those characters, because you kind of hear it in a different light, I guess, than if the camera was actually focused on them, because it kind of seems like they're unaware that there's a camera listening to them or there's anybody listening to them. It's kind of seems like it's, just or just catching some conversation that wasn't actually meant to be recorded, even though it is.
right. Well, yeah, it's like when you're walking down the street and you happen to overhear somebody, and it's like, do they know that I can hear what they're talking about?
Right.
Okay, I have Jin as a waiter and smiling. Seeing him and Son happy is a nice sight compared to every episode so far that we've had.
All right.
Using subtitles for most of the episode in an American network show. I thought that was a very bold move. Of course, considering the time, 2004, no one really did that, and that just helped to kind of pump up the fact that this was an international show. Yeah, we have these characters, but to say that for, an hour long episode, we're going to focus, a lot of the action on them with subtitles. That was a huge thing. You don't really do that on American television.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of that. That's an interesting point. Because it's like, especially like this early on in a TV show, like when you don't know really how your audience is responding to the show. I mean, obviously at six or whatever season episodes in, they're gonna know something, but it's a good point that they would spend that much time focused on having to have like characters with subtitles.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like I said, even 2004, they didn't really do that, and in that same year on the same network, they had like Desperate Housewives and Grey's Anatomy, which also diversified TV a lot,
Hmm.
but there wasn't really, even on a show like Desperate Housewives where characters would speak Spanish or something, it was very rare that pretty much you would hear uh, an Asian language as one of the top things. And like I said, for for a large portion of the episode, and then of course the
Yeah.
series as it went on, that we would get subtitles, and it kind of set the show apart in that way of like, this is a show for, I don't want to say intelligent people, but people who are willing to put in the effort of like, I'm going to pay attention to this show. This isn't
Yeah.
necessarily a show that you could just have on in the background. And this, we know that up until this point, but this kind of furthers that take on the series.
Yeah, definitely.
I have the flashback is cut short by Jin attacking Michael. Sawyer and Saeed exhibiting A-team leadership, especially since the others aren't around. We've talked in a previous episode about how, Jack, of course, is the leader. Kate is kind of the second. And, Saeed at certain points doesn't necessarily want to report to Jack. And Locke is like, I'm going to go off on my own and I'm going to hunt and whatever. So the fact that Sawyer and Saeed here are like, well, the others aren't around, we're going to be taking charge.
Hmm.
Saeed says the Sky Marshal, which isn't exactly accurate, so there's a bit of an error. The handcuff, of course, becomes a bigger part later on. I don't necessarily want to spoil that too much. That's a little tease there for fans. A trek through the jungle, a staple of the show. I have the set design on the caves is beautiful. I don't know if you've ever actually looked, like paused it or anything, or looked at the, if you actually go and like rewatch this episode or any of the episodes that take place in the caves,
Hmm.
whoever did the set design for that they just did an incredible job. Because a lot of people, I know when I went to Hawaii, I would have people here at home going, "Oh, did you see where they filmed where the hatch was?" And they
Right.
knew that inside the hatch was a set, but they thought there actually was a hatch in the ground, which of course we find out later. And like, these caves of course aren't real, but they
Yeah,
look incredibly real,
I
and
do.
I just think the set designer did a very good job with it.
Yeah, no, I've never actually like you said stopped the film and like looked around at it, but you definitely feel very immersed in actual caves. Like it doesn't seem like it's a set by any means.
Yeah. Locke starts to become Charlie's friend, and Charlie is even surprised that Locke agrees with him when he says about, oh, we should maybe look through this stuff, and then uh, Jack says, yeah, look for any medicine or any drugs, and
Yeah.
Charlie's like, yeah, drugs, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have, it seems like Jack kind of brushes Charlie's thought off. He's more worried about getting water than looking through those supplies, which I would think would be odd, because you would think the leader, yeah, he wants to, get water to the people, but you would think he would also be just as invested, as opposed to like, yeah, why don't you go through that? Here, bring me your stuff so I can do, what I set out on my mission to do.
Right. It makes sense that Jack is kind of like that though, because he seems like a very one-track minded guy. He's just very focused on the task at hand and doesn't really waver from that.
Right. I have, Beehive. Locke is so calm in the face of fear, which I pointed out in an earlier episode how in his flashback he was so angry and his emotions were kind of all over the place. But almost every time you see him on the island, he's always, calm and everything's going to be okay and whatever. And even in this situation where even Jack and Kate are like, oh no, what do we do? Locke is like, let's just be calm about this.
Yeah.
We need to get something to cover the hive, Um, the fact that, back on the beach with Michael and Jin and all of them, um, he says, surely there must be something. And Michael's like, surely? I just thought that was because, you know what I mean? Saeed is like, well, you there has to be something you're not telling us.
Right.
He couldn't
Yeah.
just believe him.
Yeah.
I have here, Michael tells how in the USA, Koreans don't like black people. This is a racial war I've never heard of until this show.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that either. Like, why do Koreans not like black people?
I have no I mean, you hear things, and not just recently, even back then, and when I was growing up and whatever, you would hear things about, racial tension and blah blah blah, but one of the race things, I never really heard of was Koreans and black people. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, unless he was just in a bad mood and he just like was spouting off something just to make himself like feel better or something.
Well, that's possible because he does say later on to Walt about like, what? Oh, I don't think like that anyway.
Yeah, true.
I have Sawyer, the stereotypical redneck, comments on what I pointed out in a previous episode. Talking slower and louder doesn't destroy a language gap.
Hmm.
Because
Michael
for
always
some
does
reason,
that.
Saeed thinks that will work. I don't quite get it.
Michael does the same thing. Like he yells at them or like I don't know, does everything to try and get them to understand.
But I think it's kind of funny though that like Sawyer, who has continually insulted people, and he's supposed to be the redneck. He's like, he makes it, he does it in a sarcastic way, but he's just like, that won't work, you know.
Yeah.
I have Hurley once again calls Jin Chinese. Classic Hurley.
Yeah.
Uh, I have we were at that church. It was beautiful, which is the where Sun finds out they're standing at the bridge, and Jin
Yeah.
says like, "Oh, I'm about to I'm going to go to work for your father." We
Yeah.
were there when we were in Hawaii.
Yes.
Actually, anybody who's listening to this or watching this in I think maybe an episode or two before this, because I put little things of video, like little pictures going in and out while everybody's talking. And somebody supplied me with some group shots that we took standing in the bamboo. And there's you and me and Esteban and Jake and a few other people. And those were actually taken like right off to the side of where that church actually is.
Mhm. I remember being so reluctant to take that group photo. I was kind of just standing on the side. Everyone was all standing in the bamboo, and I'm like, yeah, no, it's okay. I'll just stand here and wait.
You don't like us as a group? Is that what you're saying?
No, I was timid.
Okay. Uh, I have Sun, as we find out, knows her father too well. This is why she's hesitant for Jin to work for him.
Yeah, afraid.
Well, obviously, we'll find that out. We find it a little bit in this episode, but definitely, in future episodes, what that
Hmm.
exactly means. I put Charlie really stepped in it this time, because, of course, he steps into the
Yeah.
beehive.
Hmm.
When they're running, and skeleton they see for the first time. I have here one of the longest running mysteries in the show. 40 or 50 years, Jack says. Interesting, which of course anyone who knows the show will also, going back and seeing that line, will probably, anybody chuckles whenever he says 40 or 50 years, that it takes clothing to decompose like that. Jack finds and immediately hides the stones from Locke. Locke has done nothing but be helpful to Jack, but Jack still thinks Locke is crazy due to Locke pushing him to chase the white rabbit and his line about looking into the eye of the island.
I didn't actually. Was he actually trying to hide the rocks from him, or was he just like? I thought it was just like a shot where he was looking at the rocks and then he was putting them away as Locke was speaking. I never actually took it to be that he was hiding from them from Locke, but that I guess that's could be
Oh,
what
you
he was
you
doing.
didn't take it that way.
No, not really. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm just like oblivious, and I just think that certain way that they shoot the scenes, it doesn't necessarily have any meaning, but that could definitely be what he was doing. Like to me it was just like, oh, Locke's talking, these rocks are weird, I'm going to put them back in the bag kind of thing. I didn't actually take it to mean that he was hiding them from Locke, but that's very interesting because it's true. I don't think anybody at that point really trusted Locke because I mean he's has a suitcase full of knives and he's like tromping around the forest like he knows the place or something. Like that's definitely an interesting thought.
Because see, yeah, I always just thought that he was, he saw the rocks, and I, to me, I, maybe I'm like you said, maybe it was just the way they shot it or whatever, but it looked like he kind of turned when he was
Yeah,
putting them away. But I mean, maybe he was just putting them away. I don't know. That's how I always just took it.
yeah.
I have Charlie has the quips in this episode because, of course, earlier he said about verbally copulating, and this time Kate says that there was bees in the shirt, and he makes his joke.
Yeah.
Um, I have Locke now finds out that there were people there before our heroes, because when Charlie says, "Oh, is this the people that came before us?" and Locke's like, "What?" Because at that point he didn't know that there was the distress signal and everything
Yeah,
else,
right.
which somebody points out later in a few episodes or something when they're talking about the polar bear or something, and somebody's like, "You didn't hear about the polar bear?"
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all trying to hide things from each other, which I thought was really weird. I mean, not weird, but so much as interesting, and the way that these people are definitely the leaders, and these people are the other people who don't know about certain things like this are the followers and whatever.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something that I always was like thought was so impressive about the show because I lose track so easily. But the fact that they always know or keep track of who knows what, like there's so many characters and we just like we know everything because we're watching the show. But like when they come back to characters that have no idea about certain things and then it's mentioned to them and then you realize when they react in that way like what there was a polar bear, you realize that they didn't know and you kind of just like there's so many instances all throughout the whole show of like things that people hid from certain characters and when they actually find out it's like wait what they didn't know about it. And it's I always find that impressive that they keep track. I mean obviously they have to keep track of that kind of thing, but it's always funny.
And of course, that we have the first instance of somebody calling them Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
I have the flashback shows Sun and Jin drifting apart. He's not around, so he gets her a dog.
Mm-hmm. And she's all like happy with it, but she can tell like this isn't what I wanted. And she says like when like remember when all you had to give me was a flower, and it's like she's thankful for the dog, but at the same time it's not the same. It doesn't have that same sentiment as the thoughtfulness behind like a simple flower.
Exactly. That's, something that people always say, "Oh, it's not the gift, it's the thought behind it," which is why I don't
Yeah.
get people birthday presents, because I'm thinking about them at least.
That works.
um, okay, I have four. One of them says something about the fact that there's 46 people. I believe it's Jack says, 46 people need water. And I have that
Mm-hmm.
number should be off. I think it should be 47 because they had 48 and then Joanna drowned. And of course,
Right.
if you ask Esteban, he says the show never makes any mistakes. And because I pointed out a few continuity errors in some of these early ones or whatever, and he's just like, no, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, everything has a reasoning. And so I'm gonna wait. Unless you have something, I'm gonna wait and see in the comments what he has to say about that.
No, I lose track of things so much, so you know, I wouldn't even think about their numbering. I just believe them.
I have Jack once again tries taking charge despite constantly telling anyone who will listen that he doesn't want to be a leader. Because, of course, I've talked about that in previous episodes so far, how constantly he's like, I'm not a leader. Everyone always wants to treat me like a leader, blah, blah, blah. But yet, from the very opening of the show, he takes charge. I'm going to
Hmm.
help save the pregnant girl. I'm going to help pull this guy from under the wreckage. I'm going to help, this woman who can't breathe and is getting improper CPR. And then all of a sudden, and he's the leader, and then he's like, but I don't want to be the leader.
Right. It's like he's the only person, or that's just his character. That's all he knows how to do. He doesn't want to be the one in charge, but like nobody else seems to be doing it, and that's like he doesn't know how else to live, pretty much.
Yeah. I have, and the look in Kate's eyes show that maybe she doesn't agree with him. She doesn't want to settle in. It's against her always on the run nature.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, okay, I have Walt points out the racist question that we talked about earlier, and Michael, still trying to show that he can be a father and role model, has to backpedal on it.
Yeah.
Um, I have now. This is something I did point out one or two episodes ago. How as I watch it, as I get a little bit older, I start to realize how much of a little punk Walt actually is in these early ones. You know, and I have Walt, little snot that he is, asks what Michael did to Jin because no matter what, he cannot take his father seriously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then I don't know if it was at that point or earlier when he's like, "You don't know anything about me. When's my birthday?" kind of thing. I thought that was funny,
Yeah,
especially when his dad comes back. Well, when's my birthday? And then Walt's kind of put in his place because he doesn't know.
exactly. Which, if I remember correctly, now I could be wrong. I remember watching this when I like right after I ordered and got the complete series box set. And if I'm not mistaken, the day that they released the box set, because I ordered it a little late, so it came like 2 days later. The
Hmm.
day they released the box set, at least here in the U.S., was the day of Walt's birthday.
August 24th, I think it was.
I think so, yeah.
That's funny.
Because I remember watching it and going, "Oh, that's funny," because that just
Yeah,
happened.
that's great.
Okay, I have Jin all bloody in the flashback. This scene, of course, comes back later, and it's brilliant. Little
Hmm.
tease there.
Yeah.
However, it does indicate the final straw in their potential split.
Right, because it looks like he's just done something terrible because we don't actually know what went on, and then their son making assumptions about what he's doing, especially knowing her father and knowing what kind of stuff I don't think she even knows what kind of stuff he does, just that he's a bad guy pretty much, but she's just thinking that Jin is a horrible person at this point.
Exactly, because he's not there with her, and he's off working for the father, and he's being influenced too much by the father now. I have he didn't hit her back because she slaps him, and he
Hmm.
didn't hit her back. I thought that was very important because so far, pretty much any interaction between them we've seen, he's never raised a hand to her, but he's always been that kind of American concept of the Asian man, I'm in charge, the
Yeah.
Asian woman is subservient. And of course, in the pilot, she has that powerful moment where she unbuttons that button,
Yeah.
but then pretty much everything else he's like at the one point she's trying to help him with something with gathering fish or whatever, and like he slaps her hand away, and
Yeah.
he's always like, I will take care of you and whatever. And they could have kind of upped the ante here with that if he had like hit her back, but I think it's very interesting that they didn't have him hit her back.
I think like the time that he is sort of lashing out, like when he slaps her hand, it's more like kind of instead of using words to say like don't do that or whatever. But I don't see him like I've never seen him as an actual violent person. So to me, it makes sense that he wouldn't slap her back. Like I feel like that would be such a like against his character to see him hurt her because I think that's the last thing in the world that he wants to do, whether or not he realizes how much he actually is hurting her by not being there for her. Like he never intends to actually do her any harm.
Right, exactly. I have the look in Sun's eyes confirms what she feared. He'd become another of her father's lackeys.
Yeah.
Um, Kate thinks that Jack was checking her out. And why wasn't he? Hurley did. In case you're not familiar with that, I talked about how in the episode where she has the gun and with when the marshal is dying,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she looks over at the one point, and Hurley takes notice of the gun, and there was really no reason for him to notice where the gun was in the back of her pants unless he was checking her out.
Yeah, I guess so. But at that point, wasn't he also like wary of her because didn't he know that she was some convict? So I feel like
Yeah,
he was looking at her out of fear because he's just that kind of person that's like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen?
yeah, I don't
So
know.
he could have been just like staring at her, like keeping tabs on her, making sure that he's safe and she's not gonna come attack him or something. But I guess that's totally fair. He was checking her out.
um, okay, I have where Charlie is trying to walk away from Locke, and he says that
Mhm.
he's going to the loo and to bugger off, which are two phrases, as you just heard, that cannot be said in an American accent. They sound terrible. You
Yeah,
can't you can't really say loo and bugger off in an American accent and have it sound even remotely natural.
yeah.
Well, now you're Canadian, so let's hear it in your Canadian accent.
I would just say, I'm going to the loo. Bugger off.
Yeah, see, it doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah,
Because
it's still fun.
Canada and England are like cousins, right?
We're buddies, yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't talk the same. And if I were to even try to say it like he does, I'd just butcher it. So,
Okay. I have finally someone recognizes Charlie, and he's so happy because Locke says like, "Oh, I know you from Drive
yeah.
Shaft."
Hmm. And his whole face lights up.
Exactly, because that's pretty much all. Well, I mean, apart from his drugs and trying to get with any number of the women, that's pretty much
Yeah.
all he's wanted is for someone to recognize him.
Hmm. To recognize him or acknowledge him or like notice that he actually exists.
Yeah, exactly. I have Saeed is capable of being a leader, and he's not letting Jack take over. That's when they kind of come into conflict of, Jack's like, I want to move everybody to the caves, and Saeed's like, I don't think that's a good idea.
He just grabs his firewood and just stomps off.
Yeah, I'm taking my ball and going home.
Yeah.
Um, and Jack goes campaigning, and so does Saeed, because they each go to people and they're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this. No, 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 I think we should do this.
And then Saeed goes and apologizes to Michael and says, like, Jack's coming to talk to you about moving to the caves, don't do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I have Hurley starts asking about Jack and Kate. Now this is my opinion because somebody else told me they didn't necessarily see it like this, but I have that Hurley seems to have shown interest in Kate. Of course, I mentioned that I thought that he was checking her
Yeah.
out, and there's been a few other little things, but I have he seems to have shown interest in her before, but he uses humor to mask his true feelings here. Because he says,
Yeah.
like, oh, are you two going to move into a cave together? And Jack's like,
Right.
what is this, high school or whatever?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's not.
Hmm. Yeah, he
Um,
says that wasn't a denial.
yeah. Then I have Sawyer finally confirms that Hurley does have a thing for Kate, because that's when he calls Hurley Captain Falafel,
Yeah. So you
which of
got
course is
the
another Sawyer nickname. We tend to point those out a little bit on this show. Um, and then of course Sawyer points out the obvious damned if you do, damned if you don't aspect. Move to the caves, then, if a plane flies over, you're screwed that way. If they stay and then the doctor's not around or whatever, no one's around and you're screwed that way.
Right. I just have a note about the Captain Falafel thing that just kind of dawned on me. Maybe I missed something, but how does Sawyer know that, like, Hurley had a thing for Kate? Is that just something he picked up on, or did he, like, overhear something? I mean, I
I
guess he probably picked up on
I
it, but
don't remember if he overhears it. I think it's just because he's kind of been watching everybody,
yeah.
because like at the end of the previous episode, I believe it was the previous episode, he said about Boone, becoming the number one on everybody's most hated list. So
Yeah.
he has kind of been watching everybody a little bit, I think. And I think
Hmm.
maybe he just kind of picked up on the fact that like Hurley was and maybe it was, as you said, maybe Hurley was just paying attention more to Kate because he was fearful of her. So like,
Right.
keep your friend, your friends close and your enemies closer kind of thing. But I think
Hmm.
maybe Sawyer took that as like, oh, he's interested in her. And also
Yeah.
because guys, and I think ladies do this as well, but guys kind of tend to notice when another guy is interested in the same girl that they are
Right.
interested in because it's the whole
Yeah.
competition thing. And of course,
Yeah.
we've seen little bits of flirtation between Sawyer and Kate at this point. So maybe he noticed, of course, he noticed Jack and Kate, and maybe he noticed, like, oh, Hurley seems to be moving in on the girl I like too,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
But again, that's all just, speculation on my part. I don't know 100%. Um, I have Sun was looking to split and run away from, in the when she's decorating, quote unquote. And then of course the big twist we see in the present time, Sun speaks English.
Yes.
Now, cuz you said you got into it a little late, right? You started
Yeah.
after
Third.
season 3 was over?
Yeah.
Okay. So now when because I would assume you kind of like binged watched all of them in a sense. So now was that a big shock to you guys?
Um, I don't know. Like, I think with the foreshadowing and stuff of her, like, sort of overhearing other conversations and stuff, you kind of like pick up on that maybe she does understand them, and whether or not she speaks it, like, you kind of pick up on that. And like prior to her actually speaking English, there's the flashback of her with that woman decorating, and then she's like, "Have you been taking your lessons?" And you kind of just like pick up on it, but I think it still came as a surprise when she actually started speaking English, because you're like, wow, you actually realize that the whole time up till then she could actually understand what everyone was saying, and she was more in the loop than we thought she was.
Right, and especially if you go back and you say you stop right there and go back to these first few that have already been covered, and like
Mhm.
when Michael is like, I'm going off to hunt,
Yeah.
and like he's trying to play charades with her, and the whole
Yeah.
time she's probably standing there going like, dude, I know what you're
Yeah.
saying, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and then of course my next note is Michael's asking all the right questions. Why do you speak English and your husband doesn't know? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
I have Locke knows Charlie's secret, the fact that
Hmm.
he's a drug addict and stuff. And I put he knows of the healing power of the island and he wants others to come to find it as well.
Right.
And he can't really say how or why because at this point everybody thinks he's crazy as it is, you know.
Yeah. I thought it was great that he offered Charlie the choice, though, like made it so that it was an empowering thing to give up the drugs, like not just do it or just because I know you have them. Like he said that if you give it to me, it's that it'll be your choice because you're gonna otherwise run out eventually, and then that won't be your choice. So do it now so that you are empowered by your choice to give up the drugs.
Right. Well, from what I understand, and I know a few people who've had issues with drugs and alcohol and things, and from what I understand, that is a big part of it, is like they kind of need to have that moment of like, some of them, not all of them, some of them need to hit whatever their version of rock bottom is, but some of
Yeah.
them are like, I need to make this choice
Right.
that I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have Kate decides not to go with Jack, which is odd because at pretty much every point up until now, she's been on his side.
Right.
Then he asks what she did, and she talks about the fact that he had his chance to know.
Yeah.
And as I talked about in a previous episode, he didn't want to know, but now that she disagrees with him, he's curious, and we still have to wait about a season or so till we finally find out.
Yeah. So it's like, way to go, Jack. You ruined our chance to know. Like, we had to wait so long to you.
My next note is time doesn't matter on a damn island. I love that line.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's the way that he delivers it or what, but just when, when Michael's talking about the
Yeah.
watch, I love that.
Yeah, I think it was the delivery because he was so like, fine, you want your watch, have it. Like, I don't understand why you're getting so like upset about it. It's a stupid watch. And yeah, like his delivery on that line, that time doesn't matter, was perfect because like they're making such, or at least Jin is making such a big deal, but it wasn't about the watch. It was about like the sentiment and the meaning behind the watch and the value of the watch.
Exactly. Um, okay, we see the White Rabbit scene of Jack at the airport from a different perspective now. We
Mhm.
saw Jin previously, but now we have a better understanding of it.
Yeah, like why he was there and where Sun was and yeah.
Right. He gives her, Jin, of course, gives her a glimmer of hope. He has the little flower. But I
Yeah.
have, of course, once the plane went down, that was all dashed away again. Because he had that flower, and then once the plane went down, all of a sudden he kind of reverted back to, you know, and like you said, it was probably because they were, apart from everybody, and he wanted to protect her because nothing that he did, nothing that he did necessarily was out of wanting to hurt her. It was more
Right.
out of love and protecting her.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But then at that point, she's thinking, like, man, I should have just left because then I wouldn't be here right now.
exactly. Um, I have Locke isn't exactly upset at the new tenants in the caves. The more people in tune with the island, the better in his mind.
Hmm.
And then we see the divide between the survivors, those that stay on the beach, those that are in the caves. And then I have as the closing scene, and I commented this in a previous episode, but they have the thing where it's kind of that music montage that a lot of
Right.
shows have where they kind of sum up where our
Yeah.
characters are at the end of the episode over a piece of popular music, and
Hmm.
it doesn't I don't think it works with this show. They only do it a few times, I know, in season 1, but I don't think it really works. If they had done maybe the score, maybe, but trying to
Right.
use music, I don't think it works, in my opinion.
I don't know. I kind of liked it just like because it kind of tied everything together. Like maybe they could have used different songs, but I, I, I don't know. I kind of enjoyed the choices of songs, and it sort of was like in the first season when you're kind of trying to get the grasp of each set of characters. I thought it was a good way to kind of tie everything together and kind of to summarize what's going on in every little aspect of the show. Like later on, you can't really do that because I mean you can. I guess later on it is a better way to do that because everybody is so scattered on the island, and that's a good way to tie people together. I guess maybe in the first season it's not really as necessary, maybe just because they're all so close together right now. Like they haven't really branched out much, but still, I thought it was a good way to sort of show what's going on in the different groups of people, and it sort of ties them together that way.
Okay. See, I didn't even look at it like that. The fact that, it does kind of show that they're apart, but they're still going through the
Right.
same thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the episode House of the Rising Sun.
Hmm.
Do you have anything that you want to say about this episode? I know you said you were rewatching the entire series recently, right? So when
Yes.
you went back and watched it, did you notice anything that maybe I didn't point out, or
Um,
anything that you thought was notable?
I don't know. I don't think so. Like I didn't necessarily pay like super good attention to this episode just because like I don't particularly enjoy their characters. They're not terrible characters, of course, but I don't know, it's just one of those episodes to me that just showed a progression of events. Like I didn't really pick up on anything super important. Although the the bodies in the cave. I think that was a very like important thing in the episode because it's really the only time they see them.
Right. I think that's pretty much it that we have to cover for this episode. Thank you very much for being on the show. I know you were very hesitant about coming on.
Well, and it was like it was like one of those things. It's like, when does this happen? When is a time that we can both get together and actually make it work?
I don't think it was like pulling teeth though.
No, I know, but it's like I was also like, I've never done this before, and I didn't really know how you do it, and or like what your process is. So it was more like, stress.
Well, now you know, and hopefully I can get you to come back for another episode. In case anybody wants, is there any way that they can contact you on social media or anything?
I have a Twitter account that I don't really use, but I mean, you could get a hold of me there at Kelsey Devois.
Okay. Um, and I think that's gonna be it for the episode. Thank you very much, Kelsey, for joining us here on Lost with Friends, discussing House of the Rising Sun.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, no problem. And of course, the way we normally end this is by saying thank you, namaste, and good luck.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, it's Paul, your host for most of the shows on the goes. Okay, that was terrible. But hopefully that episode you just listened to wasn't. So if you enjoyed it, how about you click that little like button, maybe give us a subscribe, and share it to your friends. Thanks.